Hey there, fellow tamers and Digidestined. It's Mike, aka Sinaku from Overground, and welcome back to the channel. We're continuing on with episode 4 of our Rainbow series. This time we're going to be covering the color green. Now, this deck, I'm not going to lie, it was pretty hard to build. In terms of competitive green deck that I kind of have access to, I'm in Canada, so I haven't received any of the power-up packs yet, so I don't have access to something like the Jamming Palmon that lets me kind of play the Green HerculesKabuterimon OTK. And just Palmon in general just helps in terms of kind of bringing together all of the Digiburst archetypes. So what we kind of put our heads together and said was, what's the best kind of green deck we can build given the circumstances? And Adam, who's another member of this channel, he loves HerculesKabuterimon, and we had actually built him a HerculesKabuterimon proxy deck way back in the day, back when the green starter decks were first revealed. I think it was like November or December of last year, and we actually have a video up of that match where we played his green insect deck, I believe, against one of my Imperial Digimon decks. I can't quite remember, but either way, so we were super excited for that deck to finally come into North America, and unfortunately, now that we've received it, it also came with the hit of Hidden Potential Discovered. So we cannot play the deck at its full potential and at its full capacity. But he still wanted me to try to build a HerculesKabuterimon deck. He wanted a piercing bug deck. That was the requirements. He wanted, it was called like the Bug Stinger, I think it's what he called. He loves his bugs. But anyway, this is kind of what I've settled on, given the circumstances and what we actually had access to in terms of what we pulled out of our boxes. Had I had more copies of Nidhogg, I think we would have built just a straight Nidhoggmon deck, and I would have just kind of foregone the HerculesKabuterimon completely, because since HBD is at 1, Hercules is a little bit harder to kind of get into play, and a little bit harder to get into play consistently at that. But at the end of the day, this is still a pretty nifty little green deck that can do a bunch of little bit different things, and I think it still keeps in the old HerculesKabuterimon tradition and kind of keeps on the theme that Adam was looking for. So again, this is for you, buddy. I hope you enjoy it, and let's go ahead and talk about it. So our 5 eggs here, we've got 4 copies of Argomon and 1 copy of Modimon that's kind of hiding out in the corner. Now, Argomon is the baby of choice here because we are heavily invested in the download mechanic. That's how we can actually get into our megas a lot faster here, and this is why we're also playing so many 2-cost rookies as we kind of go down the line. And what the download mechanic allows us to do is that it comes into play suspended, or we have to suspend a Digimon to evolve over it, so that it'll put a suspended Digimon on our field. And if that suspended Digimon happens to have Argo as the baby and our opponent can't deal with it, that means in combination with our Mimi Tamer, if we have her in play to go to 3, our Argo automatically puts us to 4, which is prime number to play our HerculesKabuterimon without necessarily having to end our turn. So it's kind of like a super delayed green Hammerspark, but at the end of the day, it kind of helps us get to where we need to be and helps us get our plays a-flowing. And Motimon is just there because it helps us give our level 6s plus 1000. Not really much to say, but we do need to play the 5th egg in green specifically because Mimi can accelerate our hatching process. Now we're going to move on to the rookies. We're playing 4 copies of the new starter deck Tentomon. This is on play. Just look at the top card of our deck. If it's a green Digimon, add it to our hand. Awesome. Just free +1 free consistency and ability to just keep digging down our deck into our combo pieces. We're playing 3 copies of Goblumon and 3 copies of Argomon. These are just 2 drops to help accelerate our download potential. Next, we're playing 2 copies of Terriermon. This is to help us deal with any memory shenanigans that our opponent could potentially doing. Like, for example, Terriermon would stop the Argomon from getting the extra memory. It also stops things like the Patamon in the yellow decks. It also stops things like Hammerspark as well. And 2 copies of Lalamon, because since we are a Digiburst-based deck, this gives us a constantly recurring rookie that we allow to put back in our hand when she gets detached from Digiburst, similar to the Gaomon that we discussed earlier in the blue Mirage Galgamon deck as well. Our champion lineup's a little bit strange. Green has so many good champions, it's really hard to like settle on the best ones. But we're playing 2 copies of Vegemon. This is just because it's a 4-cost champion that we can put down really early on if we end up bricking. 2 copies of Togemon. This is the BT1 Togemon that on Digivolution we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, add a level 5 or higher Digimon among them, add into our hand. So this helps us get our entire top end and our ultimates as well to get access to our downloaders. But it also helps us search Chaosmon, which is really important because until now Green did not have access to a level 7. And because we have a built-in way to actually potentially get it a little bit faster, I like playing Togemon for that option specifically. Then we're playing 4 copies of Gargomon. This is the similar to the Gargomon and the Kabuterimon debate, where For every one of our opponent's rested Digimon, we get plus 1,000. It costs 1 to evolve as well, and it's a 5 cost. So again, worst case scenario, if we end up breaking, we can actually play it for relatively cheap. And finally, 4 copies of the new blocker Kabuterimon, which is another 1 cost evolution as well, and is another blocker to help us stay alive a little bit faster. Now, I do want to talk about the inheritables real quick before we move on to the rest of the deck, because the big glaring omission you're going to notice from this deck is that we're not playing the plus 1,000 Agumon. And I do miss him, and I do love him, and I would love to try to make space for him, but I found in testing that when it came to just Digiburst as a whole, your inheritables are kind of redundant at this point, because you're just kind of getting rid of them to activate other powerful effects. And despite the fact that HerculesKabuterimon has piercing, I would have loved to have been able to find a way to keep giving him extra DP buffs to run over certain things in certain situations. But when you're constantly detaching materials to trigger that ability to suspend your opponent's Digimon, I found that Gargomon came up the most, just because we don't necessarily have to detach the Gargomon, and we can actually get more DP gains depending on how many Digimon our opponent has that are suspended. And so yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that real quick, because I know it is something that is missing, and it is something that I absolutely tried to work into the deck, but we just could not find the space. So moving on to the elements, we're playing 1 copy of the limited Argomon. You know, why not? You pretty much have to play it at this point. It's a green deck. It's a mandatory inclusion. Digisorption 3, we get to play it for free. And when attacking Inheritable, we get to play 1 tapped Digimon from our hand for free, level 3 specifically. And then to round out our downloaders, we're playing 4 copies of Blossomon as well. Then, to round out the ultimate lineup, we're actually playing 4 copies of the new Mega Kabuterimon from the starter deck. And this Mega Kabuterimon is a beast, and it combos so well with HerculesKabuterimon. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the discussion about inheritables, because our Gargomon is so powerful, and our Mega Kabuterimon is so powerful. So if we end up evolving our HerculesKabuterimon and an entire stack, we're generally always going to be detaching our baby and our rookie so that we can kind of keep all of these effects online. And what Mega Kabuterimon does is that once per turn, when we delete an opponent's Digimon by battle, we get to trash the top card of our opponent's security. So not only do we potentially get to do piercing with our main top end, we also get to rip an additional card out with Mega Kabuterimon. So it's almost like an additional security attack +1, but we get to trash the card instead of triggering it. So if there are any options or any tamers, they won't activate. Now, there is an argument to play Kakuamon in this deck, because Kakuamon in combination with piercing in combination with Mega Kabuterimon means that we can get 3 security checks. But again, when it comes to the Digiburst ability where we need to send our sources to suspend any Digimon, I felt like having these additional DP buff gains and keeping the Mega Kabuterimon underneath was a lot more powerful. Then we're going to move on to HerculesKabuterimon himself. So he's 12,000, he has piercing, and his effect is Digiburst 2, so we get rid of 2 materials once again, and we can just suspend one of our opponent's Digimon, bar none. Just the old flower cannon, just literally for free. We can suspend a blocker, we can suspend anything that we just want to eat up. We run it over with HerculesKabuterimon, get that free piercing, and if we have Mega Kabuterimon as well, we can get that additional free trash check. Next, we're playing 2 copies of Nidhoggmon, and now we only pulled 3 copies total out of our boxes. So originally there was 3 copies of Nidhogg here in this deck kind of as a supplementary mega, but Nidhogg and HerculesKabuterimon kind of clash in terms of playability because they both require you to Digiburst, and Nidhogg requires an entire full stack to Digiburst. So the way you generally play this deck is that if you need to hide into your raising area, that's generally going to become like a Nidhogg play, and then you want to kind of use your additional stack that you build kind of up front, and that goes into the HerculesKabuterimon. So that way you can bring up your big 4 stack after the fact, Digiburst a couple times with Hercules, suspend 1 or 2 that maybe not unsuspended at this point, slam down the Nidhogg, get rid of the rest of his sources, and then you can pretty much get rid of your opponent's entire board. And the board clear is kind of really cool. It kind of helps you kind of get ahead in your board state and help you kind of set your opponent back a little bit. If we had more copies of Nidhogg, I think we would probably make that the main green deck, but since Adam did love Hercules so much, we wanted to try to focus the deck as much on him as possible, but we're still playing 2 copies of Nidhogg because his effect is too powerful to ignore. Again, we just bring up it's Digiburst 4 and we get to suspend everything with 5,000 or less, but after that fact, everything that's suspended currently on the field on your opponent's side ends up being returned to the bottom of the deck. So it's kind of like an Alter S in the sense of a green equivalent of it, but you don't necessarily have to evolve it into a level 7, and everything goes back to the bottom of the deck instead of being destroyed. But it's still a way to kind of clear out your opponent's board, clear the way, get rid of all their threats, and make sure that they cannot hit you back. And then to round out our mega lineup, we're playing 1 copy of Mega Gargomon. So again, like I said in the first draft, we were playing 3 copies of Nidhogg, but we ended up replacing that for 1 copy of Mega Gargo, just because we wanted to have an ability to be a bit more aggressive. So again, this gives us security attack +1. if our opponent has something suspended, and it allows us to put it into play, suspend something that our opponent has, and lock that down. And in a format surrounded by something like BT4, that's very powerful because we can kind of lock down that Digimon and prevent them from doing that extra double swing that BT4 is so known for. Then we've got two new additions to the deck from BT4, and that's going to be the new Chaosmon. This is the regular Chaosmon, not Valderarm, that evolves on black or green. And this is very powerful because he also has piercing, but what makes him really neat is that for 6, we can evolve him on top of any of our level 6s, and then immediately he unsuspends, and then we can attack one of our opponent's Digimon, and we can actually attack one of our opponent's unsuspended Digimon. And this effect can still trigger even if the memory gauge goes over to our opponent's turn because it has to resolve completely. And so what makes this really cool, because it's basically an Omnimon that also takes away an opponent's security, because we can go into Chaosmon immediately, attack something that basically clears it out, similar to how Omnimon would have taken care of it originally, but because we also have piercing, we get to take that additional security check. And if we've got something like MegaKabuterimon underneath, if we haven't already triggered it this turn, we can go into Chaosmon, basically delete one of our opponent's Digimon, do the piercing check, and then get an additional check with MegaKabuterimon as well. And at 14,000, it's pretty hard to beat. And when you combo that with any potential DP increases with your inheritables, you could see Chaosmon potentially being 15, 16, 17,000 even. That can just get over opposing Chaosmons or any big opposing threat as well. Then we've got 2 copies of Mimi, just because you want to make sure that you can accelerate your memory and go to 3 every turn, as well as the ability to accelerate your eggs to constantly put another stack into play and constantly have another stack available to you to start building up as you go into your very powerful megas. And we're playing 1 copy of Yoshi here, and Yoshi allows us to go into our Digiburst Digimon for 1 less by suspending her. And on play, we can actually return a Digi-Egg from our trash back into our Digi-Egg deck. So now, combined with Mimi and Yoshi, we actually have 6 eggs total that we can keep cycling through. And with Yoshi, it allows us to Digivolve into our HerculesKabuterimon for 3 instead of 4, so it doesn't necessarily outright end our turn. So if we don't have access to the extra boost from Argomon, Yoshi instead is there to add an extra layer of redundancy to help us get into our HerculesKabuterimon just that much faster. And finally, for the options of the deck, we're playing 2 copies of Needle Spray. This is another new card from ST, I guess 6, is it? No, 4 actually, but the new green starter deck. But similar to Flower Cannon, checked in security, it actually gets to suspend 1 Digimon, gets added to our hand, and then very identical to Flower Cannon, when you play it from your hand normally for 2, you just get to suspend 1 of your opponent's Digimon. So what this helps us do is it helps us suspend blockers, so that way when we go into our next turn, we can just outright go after our opponent's security, or just clear whatever Digimon we need to clear, or just outright clear their blocker if necessary. And then we get an additional bonus of it to tap another Digimon as well. So where Flower Cannon couldn't hit blockers but tapped everything else, Flower Cannon is a bit more narrowed down and kind of more sniper. Needle Spray is a sniper. That's the best way I can describe it. Just helps you kind of clear out specific threats as necessary. And then 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered, because we have to play it. It's the best card in green, and it helps us absolutely get into our HerculesKabuterimon that much faster, or even our Nidhogg if necessary, to help us clear out opponent's board as well. So that is the color green in the Rainbow series. So we've covered blue, we've covered red, we covered yellow, and now we're covered green. So what do you guys think of the deck? If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. If there's anything you would change about the deck as is, please let me know. If there's anything you feel that I've missed about HerculesKabuterimon as a whole, don't necessarily comment about, you know, other green decks as a whole, because we are planning on building other green decks. We just don't have access to all the cards at this point. But yeah, if there's any way you would build HerculesKabuterimon specifically, please give me a shout. But yeah, if you like what we do here at the Overground and you're enjoying the Rainbow series thus far, please consider giving us a subscribe and help us reach our goal to reach 400 by the end of June. But I have been Mike, aka Sanaku, once again. Thanks a lot for watching the video, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.